Ever feel like breaking through in engineering is just out of reach? Today's guest has been there, and she's sharing how women in STEM can flip the script, build confidence, and take charge of their careers. Welcome to Keys to the Future. I'm your host, Gabby Coe. I've enjoyed a successful engineering career, and I'm passionate about empowering the next generation of STEM leaders. Together, we'll dive into the journeys of trailblazers who are changing the world and uncover the insights that will help you unlock the future you're meant to create. Let's get started. I'm excited to welcome my guest, an engineer, career strategist, and the founder of Her Engineering Career. She is passionate about helping women in STEM build confidence, overcome challenges, and step into leadership roles. Through her coaching and podcast, she empowers women to take control of their careers and create the professional lives they've always wanted. She earned a Bachelor of Science in Applied Science and Manufacturing Technology from Miami University, a Master of Science in Materials Engineering from the University of Dayton, and a PhD in Industrial and Systems Engineering from The Ohio State University. Please welcome Dr. Mary Kinsella. Mary, thank you so much for sharing your journey with the Keys to the Future community.
Oh, hi, Gabby. Thanks for having me.
So I'm really excited to get this conversation started because I've learned about your amazing career, and so I'd like to start by asking you to share a little bit about your career.
Sure. Okay. Well, as you mentioned, I started off in applied science and got my undergraduate degree in manufacturing technology. And after that, I worked for a few years in the microelectronics industry, both as production supervisor and then as a material control person. And that was at NCR Microelectronics. And then after that, I ended up over here in the Dayton, Ohio area following my husband to be. We both worked at the Air Force Research Lab at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I got a job in manufacturing technology and worked in electronics manufacturing, and my employer paid for my graduate degrees. So I got a master's in materials, as you mentioned, from the University of Dayton. So I completed that degree and worked in a couple of high visibility programs. I mostly did program management where I was. And so I had a program that worked with industry to build military products, military electronics modules on commercial production lines. And so that was kind of a high visibility program. And after that, I decided to go back to school and get my PhD. So that's when I went to Ohio State. And my research was in an emerging area in additive manufacturing or 3D printing. And at that time, it was still called rapid prototyping, but that's a newer area that was coming to the fore. And when I returned from that work, people were very much interested in including additive manufacturing technologies in aerospace production. And so I worked many years, setting up programs to make sure that those technologies were safe and effective for our needs. When I returned from getting my PhD, I worked in the metals area for a while. I did some work with companies in metals affordability, so for metallic materials for aerospace structures and engines. And then I ended up doing a 2-year stint as the assistant to the chief scientist in the lab. And that really taught me a lot about how research works in the laboratory. And so it was a very useful assignment for me. And then I ended up leading the additive manufacturing team. I was one of the leaders for the additive manufacturing team back in manufacturing technology in the lab. So at that point, I was getting closer to retirement, and I did a final assignment at headquarters in university relations, which was completely different. I learned a lot about recruiting and the interaction of the lab with academia. And that was my final assignment before I retired. I wanted to retire soon after I was eligible and do something different. So that's when I got into coaching.
Oh, that's amazing. It sounds like you were at the forefront of some of the amazing technologies that we are using now.
Yes. Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah. And that was the coolest thing about my job is we did a lot of leading edge stuff, and it was very satisfying to be able to work with those teams that were bringing those technologies out.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I'm curious, what inspired you to transition from engineering to founding her engineering career?
Well, as I said, I wanted to take advantage of the fact that I was still rather young and in good health, and I wanted to do something different. So I began before I retired, I began to look at what that might be. And I knew that I wanted to continue working with women in engineering because as you know, there's so few women in that field, and I wanted to be able to help people with their careers. And so it was actually one of my sisters and my daughter that encouraged me to go into coaching, which is something that I really didn't consider until they suggested it. And I kind of liked the idea. And so then I invested in some coaching training and um, invested in a coach myself so that I could set up my business. So now I do a little bit of coaching. I have a podcast that's up past 160 episodes now, and now I'm working on a book in that area.
That's amazing. I think it's so important to share that knowledge, and especially for women in trying to get in the fields that we have been in. For example, I think manufacturing is probably a mostly male dominated field. So
Very
I think
much.
it's amazing that you're setting up this business and setting up this coaching business such that you can share your knowledge, what you learned, what you applied, and kind of pay it forward, if you will.
Right, right. And share the things that we know now that we should have known earlier for people that can use it now and hopefully get farther faster in their careers.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and make the path a little bit easier. So, in your experience, what are some common obstacles? I mean, speaking of obstacles and easy or challenging paths, what are some of the obstacles that women face in engineering roles, and what are your thoughts about how we can overcome these?
Well, most of the obstacles, if you call them that, stem from the fact that there's a small percentage of women in engineering, and there is still a small percentage of women in engineering. So people aren't used to seeing women in these roles. They're still not used to seeing women in these roles, and except for a few areas where there's more women. So because of that, there are stereotypes and biases, that just naturally happens. Engineering environments and cultures were largely established by men. And so it makes it more challenging to get visibility, to get recognition. And therefore, it's harder to build your confidence and it's harder to build your risk tolerance in your career. So these are obstacles or things that they're they're not insurmountable, but they just make things a little bit more difficult in your career. And it makes it a little bit more stressful, makes you work a little bit harder where you want to get. Not that there um, aren't ways around them or through them, but they're there and you have to deal with them. It's part of your career.
Absolutely. And so, what are your thoughts about maybe some strategies how women can kind of overcome some of those obstacles, or like you said, let's not call them obstacles, but challenges, right? It makes your day a little bit harder.
Exactly. Well, one of my themes is, and this is for women at all levels, really has to do with self advocacy. Self advocacy leads to connection, which leads to opportunity, which leads you to the ability to make your contribution, your unique contribution. And if you're able to make that unique contribution, then that's really what gives you fulfillment in your career. And in my opinion, that's a definition of success. So self advocacy, people don't know about you unless you tell them. That's I know it was a misconception of mine early on in my career. I just figured if I did good work, people would recognize it. But that's not the case. They don't know about you unless you tell them. And it's important that you share what I call your career message. And that includes what you're working on, what your role is in it, the impact you're having, very important, and what you want to do next, what you're going to do next. And if you share those messages with many people very often, then that helps you get connected. And people help connect you to other people, and they help you connect you to opportunities. So it's really important that you do that at all levels in your career. And then knowing yourself is part of this as well, knowing what your values are, your skills and your strengths and your passion. And then along with knowing yourself and sharing your career message, the more you do that, the better your opportunities will be. And the more your opportunities will be aligned with you, which is also very important.
I love that. I really love that. You said self advocacy leads to connection, leads to opportunity, and then leads you to make the contribution that you made, you were meant to make,
Yes.
which then relieves you to fulfillment. That's a whole value stream right there for yourself.
Right. Exactly. So, find what you love, discover what your contribution is, and then go for that. Make that your pathway in your career. And that's what leads you to fulfillment.
And the other thing that I also picked up on is share the career message. And I think as women, we don't often do that. What are we about? It's like really our brand. And if we don't talk about what we're doing, the impact we're having, nobody's going to know about it.
Right. Right. So I did a workshop one time at a SWE event, actually, and we actually did this career message. I had people create their career message and share it with people. And, it's just a matter of a sentence for each one of those things, what you're working on, what your role is, what your impact is, and what you're going to do next. And just getting people to practice saying that out loud is goes a long way. And that's something you should be doing in your career quite a bit.
Absolutely. And, we've been talking about sometimes you may feel that you are working your heart out and you're not getting the recognition. And so, can you share some strategies, maybe to how can we as women start thinking about getting that recognition and command greater influence in the workplace?
Well, another one of the things I emphasize a lot with my clients is owning your career, especially important to know earlier in your career, but it also is important throughout. And what I mean by owning your career is that you're in charge. You can't expect that someone is going to lead you down the right path. You'll have mentors and you'll have bosses that help, of course, but you're the one who has the final say. And I think that's something to realize as early as possible. A strategy that I teach for owning your career is three parts. First of all, own your vision or your strategy for your career. Second, own your workload, which means don't let them pile on too much and don't be working on stuff that you're not interested in too much. And don't don't get stuck doing too many tasks that are non-promotable, things like that. You need to own that workload and speak up when something isn't right. And then the third thing is to own your calendar. And now, to help you stay balanced and to help you stay focused on what's important to you, you need to say no to things. You need to, don't go to those meetings that are not useful, send someone else or get the notes later or whatever. Don't overload yourself. Don't get overwhelmed. All of those things you can help by owning your calendar.
I love that because I think owning your vision, right, is important because you're the only one that knows where you want to go, and sharing that vision with others that will help you get there. And then you also mentioned the workload part because we tend to be, yes, not, we tend to be like trying to like, want to please people, right? And in a good way, right? We feel bad sometimes to like say, no, I can't do that. But I think the saying no is so powerful because then you can prioritize your yes.
Yes, exactly. And once again, you know what's most important. And it's that you want to focus on and make sure that the majority of your time is there and that you're not doing too many extraneous things or being pulled in too many different directions or being overloaded in areas that are just burning you out. All of that is important.
Absolutely. You mentioned speaking up.
Definitely.
So, yeah, in terms of speaking up, sometimes we may just take the approach of like, oh, I'll just get it done and be done with it. But then the piling keeps going on and on.
Yes.
So,
For
absolutely. So, you also mentioned to me earlier that you're working on a special project. And so I was wondering if you can tell us more about it and what you hope people will take away from that project.
I started to work on a book project, now that I have quite a bit of content in my podcast and a little bit of experience with coaching people. I would like to share that in a book. And so my approach to the book has been to interview women who are in senior levels, executive levels, and also have an engineering or science background. So they understand the challenges of the journey, right? And so I'm gathering insights from them and um, how they've conducted their own careers, things that they've learned, best practices that they've developed across. So far I've interviewed about 20 people and I hope to get to at least 25 and maybe a few more. And I'm going to see where the overlaps are in all of those conversations and gather those insights into a book. So far it's been a very rewarding process. It's great to talk to these really awesome women and to hear about their accomplishments and their ideas, and they certainly have some great pieces of advice for women who are still making their way in their careers. So I'm excited to gather those and formulate my little book thesis, and hopefully sometime in the fall timeframe I'll be able to wrap up my interviews and start the writing process for that.
That's amazing. I can't wait to read that book because I think it's important for all of us to share. We've been talking about share knowledge sharing and just learning from others how they went about their own journey, what worked for them, what didn't, but even just adapting those nuggets, right? Those really gold nuggets. It may not be one for one that you adopt things, but it just propels you, I think, into thinking about, well, if she did it this way, maybe I can think about taking some of that and applying it into my own
For
situation.
sure. Yeah. There's that bit of inspiration that
Yeah,
just comes from listening to these women. And most of us, and even today, most women engineers don't have female role models. And so this can help with that too.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I can't wait for that book to come out. So I'm also wondering what guidance would you offer those recent graduates? The book can be for everyone, starting out mid-career or even later career, because there's the span of our careers. We all need community, I think, to really thrive. So I'm also wondering what specific guidance would you offer to recent graduates entering the engineering work?
Well, my first piece of advice is to give yourself time to transition. So hopefully you've had a chance to do an internship or a co-op or something where you have experience inside a company or organization where you work in engineering. And that is super helpful. But even if you have that, it's a pretty major transition from school to work and from what you have to do for your classes versus what you have to do for a job, and launching your whole career pathway and learning how to work with people and for people. It's all, and that on top of everything you learn in your job, all the technical parts of it, it's like a fire hose, and it can be very overwhelming. And so you need to give yourself time and space to make that transition. And hopefully your university is helping you a little bit with that too. They do a much better job these days than they did when we were in school. And then my next piece of advice, I guess, is to listen and learn, but also dive in and participate. So, you know, you're going to be among all these people that have experience and some people that are really very awesome, knowledgeable people, and you can listen and learn a lot from them. But also, participate, speak up and talk and dive in and ask questions. And this is the time, especially, to start doing that. And you'll get much more out of your experience. And it also helps to build your credibility and your, I guess, attitude and approach to a worker as an engineer. Also, know your boss's expectations of you. They have expectations of you, but you have expectations of them as well. They should be helping you with a plan, some kind of career plan. They should be meeting with you periodically and helping you to navigate when you first get there. Also give you good feedback. That's a whole big discussion right there, right? So those kinds of things you can expect from your boss. And there's nothing wrong with having that kind of conversation as well. This is who I am. This is what I am expecting. What kind of feedback can you give me? And that sort of thing. And then lastly, we've already kind of touched on it. Ask for what you need. Mm. Once again, people don't know what you're thinking. People don't know who you are. People don't know what you're doing unless you tell them. So don't be afraid to ask for what you need, and find mentors too. That's
Yes.
yeah.
That's such valuable advice. And I love the way you kind of set it up in the value. Kind of, I think about it, the value stream that you're talking about, like you did earlier. But you said give yourself time to transition. It's a big transition. Then really immerse yourself in the team environment because you're always going to be working in teams. And you also mentioned don't be afraid to ask questions because everybody knows that not a one single person has an answer to the problems that we're trying to solve as a team. And then dive in. I love that part because I love working with our young people when I was working with interns and even now with our early careers because they're so full of energy and have all this technical knowledge that can be harvested and bring it into the solution space to the problem space and have that solution as well. And then you also mentioned communicate your expectations. It's a two-way street, the way that you've put it. It's really a two-way street.
Yeah, that's right. And
Yeah.
we tend, at least when I started working, I just felt like I was the one who didn't know anything and I had to, follow what everybody else was doing and listen to what they said. You have to remember you have something to contribute to. You're bringing
Absolutely.
a new perspective. You're bringing probably some new knowledge from your classes that perhaps they haven't heard about yet. So,
Right.
you have to remember that you're a contributor from day one.
Absolutely. I love that. You're a contributor from day one because that fresh knowledge perspective that you bring, the technology that you're probably using in school, they haven't seen it or maybe heard about it. So I love that. So now I'm wondering, how can early career women engineers build confidence and establish themselves in, male dominated environments like we've been talking about?
I would go back to my owning your career advice. It's just so important to be the one in charge.
Mm.
And you can just coast along. You can follow what your bosses tell you to do. You can kind of um, take the path that most new engineers take, and it'll take you along some sort of path. The thing is though, it'll be in the best interest of the organization, or it'll be in the best interest of your bosses and mentors. What you want to make sure you do is make sure it's in your best interest. So that's the importance of taking charge, owning your career, knowing what your vision and strategy is, taking charge of your workload and your calendar, and speaking up when things are not what you think they should be. And then we talked about finding what you love and set your career path in that direction. And that's an easy thing to say, but a lot of people don't know what they want. A lot of people don't know, what it is they love yet. And so you can just start working on that. Make that one of your assignments. Notice what you like to work on. Notice the kind of people you like to work with. Notice people who do things that you think you might want to do in the future and go talk to them. There's a lot of things you can do to answer that question. What is it that I have to contribute? What is it that I love to do? How do I align my work with myself? You're the only one who can answer that question. So pay attention to that. And then, start now to increase your risk tolerance. Make sure your career is in what I call forward motion. You're not stagnating in a job. You're constantly challenging yourself and trying new things. If you're thinking about making a move, don't wait until you're ready. You're ready right now. Just make a move. Think about doing some career leaps, rather than just incremental moving along. There'll be times when you can take a leap and challenge yourself to a job that has more things that you don't know about and try to make that leap. And my final thing is, I guess, don't wait, meaning don't wait for someone to invite you. Don't wait for the perfect position to come along. You need to be a little bit more proactive. Be always looking for where it is that you can make your unique contribution. And maybe there isn't a specific job that you're looking for. Maybe it needs to be created, or you need to talk to people about how you can fit it into another position. It isn't always so black and white where you need to go next. And so I encourage people to be forward looking and don't wait till somebody comes along and invites you. You have to take the step yourself.
I love all of that good advice. Oh my goodness. I was busy taking notes. Own your vision. You started out with that. And then, you're in the driver's seat,
Yes.
is what you really said. And observe. And I think observation, it's very important because you're going to observe things that you want to emulate and you're going to observe things that you don't want to emulate.
Definitely. Yeah.
And then I love that you said forward motion by challenging yourself to always learn new things and challenging, to get out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
And I really love how you finished it. Don't wait to be invited.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. Some people they're just the kind of people that get invited. They get approached by managers and say, we want you to work on this big project. It's going to be great for you. But most people don't get those invitations. There are unique people that get those invitations and they're great opportunities, but you're not always invited. Sometimes you have to invite yourself.
Exactly, exactly. So I always think about, taking care of number one, and that number one is you,
Mhm.
right? Because I think, just like you said, you're in the driver's seat, or have an idea where you want to go. And then you need to build that community around you that is going to help you get there. But it's all up to you.
Mhm. That's right.
Absolutely. Mary, as we close our conversation, where can people find you and your great resources?
Well, you can learn about me and my coaching services at herengineeringcareer.com. You can listen to my podcast at herengineeringcareer.com/podcast or on your favorite podcast app.
Mary, thank you so much for sharing your journey with the Keys to the Future community.
Thanks for having me, Gabby. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. And that's a wrap for today's episode. Stay ahead in your STEM journey. Follow Keys to the Future on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also on Instagram and Facebook for the latest insights, tips, and inspiration to help you thrive in your career.